The faint beeping of a heart monitor echoed in the sterile hospital room, a rhythmic reminder of life's fragile persistence. Anita's eyes fluttered open, her vision blurred, and her mind clouded with confusion. The soft, fluorescent light cast a gentle glow on the white walls, but it only deepened her sense of disorientation. "Where am I? What is happening?" she murmured, her voice barely audible, as if the effort of speaking sapped her remaining strength. From her bedside, a calm, soothing voice responded, "Thank God you're awake." It was Reverend Lambert, a tall man with a comforting presence. His salt and pepper hair framed his kind face, and his piercing yet gentle eyes radiated warmth. Beside him sat his wife, Grace, her beauty understated yet radiant. Her warm smile and soft hands resting on Anita's gave a sense of reassurance. "Sister Anita, you are in the hospital," Reverend Lambert explained, his voice steady. "You have been unconscious for 3 days, and we have been praying for you. The congregation has kept vigil, asking God to wake you from the coma, and He has answered our prayers." Anita's eyes welled up, and tears began streaming down her cheeks. Her lips quivered as she tried to speak, the lump in her throat making it hard. "Thank you, Reverend," she finally managed, her voice cracking with emotion. "I'm so sorry I didn't share my struggles. I thought I could handle everything myself." Reverend Lambert nodded, his gaze filled with understanding. "I understand, Anita. You are a strong woman, but remember, no one is meant to carry the weight of the world alone. That's why God gives us a community, to share in each other's burdens. You need to rest now. God is in control." Anita closed her eyes, a sense of peace washing over her for the first time in what felt like an eternity. Memories of the past weeks surfaced in her mind, the sleepless nights, the endless worries, and the overwhelming pressure. She had pushed herself to the brink, thinking she had to be invincible. But lying there in the quiet comfort of the hospital room, she realized how wrong she had been. When she opened her eyes again, the room came into sharper focus. The crisp white sheets of the hospital bed, the faint scent of antiseptic in the air, and the muted hum of distant footsteps painted a picture of care and healing. The sunlight streaming through the window created patterns on the floor, almost as if it was reaching out to her, reminding her of the beauty beyond her pain. Reverend Lambert leaned forward, his hands clasped together as if in prayer. "Sister Anita, your faith has always been a beacon for others. Your tireless work in the church, your unwavering belief in God's goodness, these are not unnoticed. But even the strongest among us need help sometimes." Tears rolled down Anita's cheeks again, but this time they weren't just tears of sorrow. They carried gratitude, relief, and the weight of emotions she had bottled up for so long. "Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate everything you and the church have done for me. And I'm so sorry I didn't let you or anyone else know what I was going through. I didn't want to burden anyone or bring my family's issues into the church." Grace, sitting silently beside her husband, finally spoke. Her voice was soft but firm, like a mother comforting her child. "Anita, there is no shame in seeking help. We are a family in Christ. When one of us suffers, we all suffer. And when one of us finds healing, we all rejoice. Let go of the guilt, dear. Focus on getting better." Reverend Lambert added, "What Grace said is true. This is not the time to blame yourself. It's a time for healing, both physically and spiritually. We're here for you, Anita. The entire congregation is praying for your recovery. Take this as a reminder that God's grace is sufficient for you, even in your weakest moments." Anita's heart swelled with emotion. She had spent so much time trying to be everything for everyone else that she had forgotten to lean on the people who cared about her. The Reverend's words were like balm to her wounded spirit, a gentle reminder that she was never truly alone. As the day wore on, the room filled with visitors, members of the church, friends, and even neighbors. Each brought flowers, cards, or simply kind words of encouragement. Their presence created a sense of warmth that melted away the cold isolation she had felt for so long. It was a testament to the impact she had made on their lives, a reflection of the love and respect she had earned through her selflessness. That night, as the hospital quieted down and the world outside seemed to hold its breath, Anita lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. The struggles, the pain, the mistakes. They were all part of a larger tapestry that she was only beginning to understand. For the first time in a long while, Anita didn't feel the weight of the world on her shoulders. Instead, she felt a spark of hope, a whisper of promise that her story was far from over. And as she drifted off to sleep, she prayed, not for strength to carry her burdens alone, but for the courage to share them and the wisdom to embrace the support of those who loved her. The next morning Anita stirred, her eyes fluttering open, her body feeling slightly stronger than the day before. A newfound awareness washed over her, but her mind was immediately consumed by a single thought. Her children. "Where are my kids?" she asked, her voice laced with urgency. Her gaze darted around the room, searching for familiar faces or any sign that they were nearby. Anxiety crept into her chest like a cold wind. In the corner of the room, Reverend Lambert and his wife, still keeping a vigilant watch over her, exchanged a glance before approaching her bedside. Their presence radiated warmth and calm, like a comforting embrace on a stormy day. Reverend Lambert, with his kind eyes and salt and pepper beard, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, while his wife, elegant and graceful, pulled a chair closer. "The children are fine, Sister Anita," Mrs. Lambert said softly, her voice as gentle as a lullaby. Her kind brown eyes met Anita's, and she offered a warm smile. "They're in school and being well taken care of. The church has provided a safe place for them to stay." Anita exhaled deeply, her tense shoulders relaxing as relief swept over her. Her children were safe, that was all that mattered. But before she could savor the comfort of this news, Mrs. Lambert continued, her expression tinged with hesitation. "There's something else we need to tell you," she said gently, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "We pleaded with your husband to reconsider the divorce, but he refused. He's already making plans to marry someone else." The words hit Anita like a physical blow. Her breath caught in her throat, and a sharp pain pierced her heart. She felt as though the fragile threads holding her world together had snapped all at once. Tears filled her eyes, blurring her vision, but she fought to contain them. She pressed her trembling hands to her face, her fingers cold against her skin. I see," Anita whispered after a long silence, her voice barely audible. She lowered her hands and blinked rapidly, determined to keep her composure. "Thank you for telling me. At least now I know the truth." Mrs. Lambert reached out and gently took Anita's hand in hers. "You don't have to go through this alone," she said softly. "We are here for you, and so is God. He has plans for you, Anita. Plans far greater than the pain you feel now." Reverend Lambert nodded in agreement. "You've always been a strong woman, Sister Anita. This is not the end for you. It's the beginning of something new. God's light will guide you through this darkness. Rest now. There is a brighter future ahead, one filled with hope and purpose." Anita looked at them, their words stirring something deep within her, a tiny ember of hope amidst the ashes of her shattered heart. She managed a weak smile, gratitude shining through her tear-filled eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice steadier now. "I don't know what I'd do without you and the church. You've been my rock." Mrs. Lambert squeezed her hand gently before releasing it. "You don't have to thank us, Anita. We're family in Christ, and family stands by each other." As the Lamberts stood to leave and give Anita some time to rest, she sank back into her pillows, her mind swirling with emotions. The pain of betrayal and loss lingered, sharp and raw, but there was also a faint glimmer of determination. Her children needed her. If her husband had turned away, she would turn toward something stronger: faith, love, and the unwavering support of her church family. The room grew quiet again, the rhythmic beat of the heart monitor her only companion. Anita closed her eyes, allowing herself to rest. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of strength begin to stir within her, a tiny but unyielding spark that whispered, "You can rebuild. You will rise." The day Anita left the hospital was bright and sunny, yet her heart felt heavy with a mix of uncertainty and hope. She clutched the small bag of belongings the nurse had handed her and stepped into the fresh air outside. The warmth of the sun kissed her skin, and a gentle breeze ruffled her hair. Reverend Lambert and his wife were waiting by their car, smiling warmly as they waved her over. "Welcome to your new chapter, Sister Anita," Reverend Lambert said with a reassuring tone. "This is the first step toward healing." Anita nodded, forcing a small smile. Though her wounds were still fresh, there was a glimmer of hope in her heart. The church had arranged for her to stay in a modest but comfortable apartment with her children. It was a clean, quiet space with simple furniture, soft cream-colored walls, and a cozy kitchen. The living room had a large window that allowed sunlight to flood in, brightening the space and giving Anita a sense of calm she hadn't felt in months. Life after the divorce was far from easy. Anita's heart ached every time she thought of her ex-husband, Eric, and the life they had once shared. Rumors about Eric and his new wife reached her ears often, but she refused to let bitterness consume her. Instead, she poured every ounce of her energy into two things: raising her children and serving God. Her children were her anchor. They had grown more resilient in the face of their father's absence, and Anita was determined to give them the love and stability they deserved. She spent her mornings preparing their meals, ensuring they left for school with smiles on their faces. In the evenings, she helped them with homework, read them bedtime stories, and prayed with them before tucking them into bed. Anita also found solace in serving at the church. One day, Reverend Lambert approached her with an opportunity. "Sister Anita," he said warmly, "would you like to work at our church bookstore? It's not much, but it's a peaceful place, and I believe you'll enjoy sharing your love for Christian books and motivational literature." Anita's face lit up with gratitude. "Thank you, Reverend. I would love that," she replied, her voice filled with emotion. The bookstore was a small but inviting space located within the church compound. The shelves were lined with colorful books, Bibles, devotionals, and inspiring stories of faith. The scent of fresh paper filled the air, and soft Christian music played in the background, creating a serene atmosphere. Anita quickly found joy in her work. She loved recommending books to visitors and helping them find words of hope and encouragement. Time passed, and Anita's life began to settle into a new rhythm. 2 years later, her children had grown taller and more independent. Her eldest daughter, Clara, was excelling in school and often helped her younger siblings with their studies. Despite Eric's complete neglect, he never sent money or even inquired about their well-being. The children thrived thanks to the unwavering support of the church. The church community became Anita's second family. They paid her children school fees, provided food when times were tough, and offered emotional support whenever she felt overwhelmed. Anita couldn't stop thanking God for the kindness he had shown her through his people. One evening, as Anita sat by the window in her apartment, watching her children play in the courtyard below, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The pain of her past hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined her. She whispered a prayer of thanks, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Lord, for using the church to wipe away my tears," she said softly. "I never thought I could smile again, but you've turned my sorrow into joy." Anita's faith grew stronger with each passing day. The bookstore became more than a job. It was her sanctuary. She often found herself sharing her testimony with visitors, encouraging them with her story of resilience and God's faithfulness. Though she had started with nothing, Anita had built a life filled with love, faith, and hope. And while the road ahead remained uncertain, she knew one thing for sure: with God by her side, she could face anything. The afternoon sun streamed through the large windows of the church bookstore, casting a golden glow across the rows of shelves filled with neatly arranged books. The faint scent of paper and ink mixed with the soft melodies of Christian hymns playing quietly in the background. Anita, dressed in a simple yet elegant blouse and skirt, stood behind the counter, arranging some newly arrived titles. Her warm smile and calm demeanor lit up the room, making the little bookstore a haven for many who visited. Just as she was dusting off a stack of devotionals, the doorbell jingled, signaling a customer's arrival. She looked up and saw a man step inside. He appeared to be in his late 40s, with a kind face framed by neatly trimmed salt and pepper hair. He wore a crisp blue shirt and dark trousers, carrying himself with an air of quiet confidence. "Good afternoon, sir." Anita greeted him with her usual warmth. "How can I help you today?" The man, whose name she would soon learn was Simon, offered a polite nod and began scanning the shelves. His eyes settled on a book titled "Take It All into God's Hands." Picking it up, he flipped through its pages thoughtfully. "This looks interesting," he said after a moment. Anita stepped out from behind the counter and approached him. "It's a wonderful book," she said, her voice enthusiastic yet soothing. "It talks about surrendering your worries to God and trusting His plans. There's a chapter about finding peace in the storm that I think you'll find particularly inspiring." Simon listened intently as Anita highlighted some of the book's key points. Her knowledge and passion for the subject shone through with every word she spoke. "You're very knowledgeable," he remarked, clearly impressed. "It's refreshing to meet someone who loves God and reads so much." Anita chuckled, a soft blush rising to her cheeks. "Thank you, sir. It's all by God's grace. I've been working here for some time now, and I've had the chance to read many of these books. They've helped me a lot." Encouraged by her warmth, Simon asked for recommendations. Anita suggested a few other titles, and before long, he was leaving the bookstore with a bag full of books and a smile on his face. "Thank you so much," Simon said as he headed toward the door. "This isn't just service, it's a ministry. Keep it up, young lady. You're doing God's work." "Thank you, sir," Anita replied, her smile bright. "We're here to serve, and I hope the books bless you." That evening, Simon sat in his cozy study at home, the bag of books resting on his desk. As he opened the first book and began to read, Anita's voice echoed in his mind. Her words had been so precise, almost as if she had written the books herself. He found himself smiling as he remembered her passion and her gentle yet confident way of explaining things. But as he read, his thoughts kept drifting back to her. Who is Anita? He wondered. There was something about her, her kindness, her intelligence, her faith, that stirred a curiosity he hadn't felt in years. Simon began attending church more regularly, and each time, he made a point to visit the bookstore. He and Anita quickly became friends, often chatting about books, faith, and life after Sunday services. Anita appreciated Simon's thoughtful nature and his genuine love for God, while Simon admired her resilience and quiet strength. Over time, Simon realized his feelings for Anita had deepened. She wasn't just a friend, she was someone he wanted to share his life with. He found himself looking forward to every interaction, every smile, and every conversation. Simon became a familiar face in the church, his presence almost expected at every Sunday service and midweek gathering. The once quiet man now radiated warmth as he immersed himself in the church community. But what truly lit up his Sundays was the chance to speak with Anita. Every conversation felt like a blessing. They would talk about books, life, and faith, their words weaving a bond that grew stronger each week. Simon admired Anita's quiet strength and her unwavering dedication to her children and God. Her laughter was soft but full of life, like a gentle melody that brought peace to his heart. One evening, as the golden light of the setting sun streamed through the church windows, Simon found himself lost in thought. He couldn't deny it any longer. Anita was more than a friend to him. She was a light, a blessing, and the person he wanted to share his life with. Simon decided to seek counsel from Reverend Lambert. After the evening service, he waited until the other members had left, then approached the Reverend, who was tidying up his notes. "Reverend," Simon began, his voice steady but tinged with nervous excitement, "I believe I've found my missing rib." The Reverend looked up with a smile. "Simon, that's wonderful news. Who is the blessed woman?" Simon's face lit up as he replied, "It's Anita, the lady who runs the bookstore. We've been talking for a while, and I can't deny how deeply I care for her. I feel led to ask her to marry me." The Reverend paused for a moment, his expression thoughtful. Simon, Anita is indeed a remarkable woman. But before you take this step, you should know her story. He shared Anita's journey, her painful divorce, the struggles of raising her children alone, and the unwavering faith that carried her through. Simon listened carefully, his admiration for Anita growing with every word. When the Reverend finished, Simon smiled. Her past doesn't matter to me. What matters is the woman she is today. Strong, faithful, and full of grace. Perhaps God allowed her pain to prepare her for this moment, for us. The Reverend nodded, his heart moved by Simon's sincerity. If you're certain, Simon, then I'll pray for you as you take this step. The following Sunday, Simon sat through the service with a mix of excitement and nerves. As the final hymn ended and the congregation began to disperse, he approached Anita, who was organizing books near the front pews. "Anita," Simon said softly, his voice steady but earnest, "may I speak with you for a moment?" Anita looked up, slightly surprised but smiling. "Course, Simon. What's on your mind?" Simon led her to a quiet corner of the church garden, where the roses bloomed brightly under the afternoon sun. The air was filled with the scent of flowers and the chirping of birds. Taking a deep breath, Simon turned to face Anita. "Anita," he began, his voice filled with emotion, "I've come to care for you deeply. You're an incredible woman, strong, kind, and full of faith. I admire the way you've raised your children and how you've remained steadfast in your walk with God despite everything you've been through. I believe God has brought us together for a reason. I want to spend my life with you and your children. Will you marry me?" Anita was stunned. For a moment, she could only stare at Simon, her heart racing. She hadn't expected this, at least not so soon. "This is a big decision, Simon," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. "I need time to pray and seek God's guidance." Simon smiled gently, his eyes filled with understanding. "Take all the time you need, Anita. I only want what's best for you and your children." That evening, Anita sat by her bedroom window, the soft glow of the moonlight casting a serene light across the room. She prayed fervently, asking God for clarity and wisdom. Her heart was a mix of emotions: gratitude for Simon's kindness, fear of making the wrong decision, and hope for a future she hadn't dared to dream of. The next time they met, Anita felt it was only fair to share her past with Simon. She invited him to the apartment, where they sat at the small dining table with cups of tea between them. "Simon," Anita began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "before I can give you an answer, I need you to know about my past." Simon reached across the table and placed a reassuring hand on hers. "Anita, I already know," he said softly. "The Reverend told me everything. And let me tell you this, your past doesn't scare me. If anything, it makes me admire you even more. Everything you've been through has shaped you into the amazing woman you are today." Tears welled up in Anita's eyes as she looked at Simon, his face filled with sincerity and warmth. "Thank you," she whispered, "for understanding, for being patient, and for seeing me for who I am." "Simon," she said, her voice steady but emotional, "I've prayed about it, and I believe God has brought us together for a reason. Yes, I will marry you." Simon's face lit up with joy, his smile brighter than she had ever seen. "Thank you, Anita," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I promise to love you and your children with all my heart." As they stood together in the warm sunlight, surrounded by the love of their church family, Anita and Simon knew they were stepping into a new chapter, one filled with love, faith, and the promise of a beautiful future. A month later, the long-awaited day arrived. The church was filled with family and friends, all gathered to witness Anita and Simon exchange their vows. The air was thick with love and joy as soft piano music played in the background. The altar was decorated with white roses and twinkling lights, casting a warm glow that seemed to reflect the happiness in Anita's heart. Anita walked down the aisle, her white gown flowing like a river of grace. Her children stood proudly by her side, holding small bouquets that matched hers. Simon, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, waited at the altar with a smile that could light up the darkest night. His eyes sparkled with love and admiration as he watched her approach. When they exchanged their vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Simon promised to love and cherish not just Anita but also her children, embracing them as his own. Anita's voice trembled with emotion as she vowed to stand by Simon's side, to love and honor him, and to build a home rooted in faith and love. The reception was a celebration of their union and the new chapter they were beginning. Laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses filled the hall as family and friends toasted to their happiness. Anita's children danced with Simon, their giggles echoing through the room. It was a picture of pure joy, a moment Anita had only dreamed of but now lived fully. Life as a family was everything Anita had hoped for and more. Simon quickly became a devoted husband and father, taking his role with grace and love. Their home was now a sanctuary of peace, laughter, and faith. Each day, Anita and Simon prayed together, read the Bible, and discussed dreams for their future. The children thrived under Simon's care, their once guarded hearts now open and full of joy. One evening, as Anita was preparing dinner, there was a knock at the door. She wiped her hands on a towel and opened it, expecting to see a neighbor or a friend. Instead, she froze. Standing on the doorstep was James, her ex-husband. His appearance shocked her. His clothes were wrinkled and dirty, his face covered in an unkempt beard, and his eyes filled with sorrow. "James," Anita said, her voice a mix of surprise and disbelief. "What are you doing here?" James lowered his gaze, his voice trembling. "Anita, I made a terrible mistake. I've lost everything, my home, my money, my happiness. Please forgive me. Take me back." Anita stood there, stunned. Memories of the pain James had caused flashed through her mind, but she steadied herself. "James," she said firmly, "we are divorced. You made that decision, not me. I've moved on, and I'm married to a man who loves and respects me." James's shoulders slumped, his once proud demeanor replaced by shame. "I was a fool, Anita. I thought I had everything, but I lost it all. The woman I left you for was a lie. She used me, took everything I had, and left me in debt. I've been living in misery ever since." Anita shook her head, her voice calm but resolute. "James, I forgave you a long time ago, but my life is no longer tied to you. You need to leave." At that moment, Simon walked into the room. His presence was steady and protective as he placed a reassuring arm around Anita. James looked at the man standing beside the woman he had once taken for granted. Without another word, he turned and walked away, his head hung low. The encounter with James only deepened Anita's gratitude for the life she now lived. Her home was filled with warmth and love, her heart at peace. She and Simon continued to grow in their faith, spending evenings reading scriptures and discussing ways to serve their community. Together, they taught the children the importance of prayer, kindness, and trusting in God's plan. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Simon took Anita's hands in his. The children had gone to bed, and the house was quiet, save for the soft hum of the ceiling fan. "Anita," Simon said, his voice filled with emotion, "I thank God every day for bringing you into my life. You've shown me what true love and faith look like." Anita smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "And I thank God for you, Simon. You've brought so much light into my life. I never thought I could be this happy, but here we are." They prayed together, thanking God for His mercy and grace. As they spoke, Anita felt a deep sense of peace. The past no longer had power over her. She was free, redeemed, and loved. From time to time, she would reflect on her journey, the pain, the heartbreak, and the moments of doubt. But those memories were no longer a source of sorrow. They were reminders of God's faithfulness and how He had turned her mourning into joy. Anita and Simon's home became a place where others found hope and encouragement. They opened their doors to those in need, sharing their story and the love that had transformed their lives. Together, they built not just a family but a legacy of faith, love, and endless gratitude.